The Galactic Council had classified humans as a minor species for exactly 47 years. We were wrong for 46 years, 11 months, and 29 days. I was there when the classification changed. Not in some sterile committee room or through sanitized reports, but standing on the bridge of the dreadnought Eternal Vigilance, watching through reinforced viewing ports as humanity's third fleet prepared to engage the Vortex swarm, a force that had consumed 17 star systems and left nothing but cosmic dust in its wake. What I witnessed in those blood-soaked hours didn't just change military doctrine across 7 galaxies. It didn't just rewrite our understanding of warfare, courage, or tactical brilliance. It revealed something far more terrifying than any weapon or strategy. It showed us what happens when a species refuses to accept that defeat is possible. The humans called it the Battle of Kepler's Stand. The rest of the universe calls it the day we realized we had been sharing space with apex predators who had been pretending to be sheep. My name is Hyxera of the Veltar Hegemony, and I was the Galactic Council's official military observer assigned to document humanity's inevitable defeat. Instead, I documented the moment the universe learned to fear a species that laughs in the face of impossible odds. This is what I saw. This is why even now, 3 cycles later, I wake screaming in the night. The first thing you need to understand about humans is that they smile when they're about to die. Not the bitter grimace of acceptance that most species display, not the vacant stare of shock, but an actual smile. Wide, genuine, terrifying. I learned this exactly 14 minutes before the Battle of Kepler's Stand began, when Admiral Sarachun turned to face the assembled fleet commanders through the holographic communication array and delivered what would later be known as the Last Stand speech. The Vortex swarm had been detected 3 days prior, emerging from the dead system of Kepler, 442b like a plague of metallic locusts. 200,000 vessels strong, each one the size of a city, moving with the synchronized precision that had made them the most feared force in known space. They had consumed the Andromedian Collective in 6 months. They had devoured the Crystal Monarchies in 8 weeks. The proud Veltar Hegemony, my own people, had lost 3 entire sectors to their advance. And here, in the backwater human system of Sol Delta 7, Admiral Chun was proposing to stop them with exactly 47,000 ships. The mathematics were not in humanity's favor. The Vortex advantage was more than 4-to-1 in raw numbers, and their individual vessels were technologically superior to human craft by several generations. Each Vortex bioship could regenerate damage, adapt to weapon frequencies, and spawn smaller fighter craft from their living hulls. They were evolution perfected for war. I had seen these creatures fight. I had watched them tear through Veltar dreadnoughts like paper, absorbing our plasma fire and converting it into fuel for their next assault. I had witnessed the death of entire civilizations, their planets stripped of all organic matter to feed the swarm's endless hunger. Standing on the bridge of the Eternal Vigilance, surrounded by human officers who should have been preparing funeral rites, I felt the familiar weight of impending defeat settle over my chitinous shell. The Council had sent me here to observe and record humanity's final moments, to catalog their tactics for future military analysis. It was meant to be a simple assignment. Watch the humans die with whatever dignity their species could muster, then file the appropriate reports. But Admiral Chun was smiling. Ladies, gentlemen, and honored Xeno allies, she began, her voice carrying across the fleet with the kind of calm authority that made veteran warriors straighten their spines. Today we make our stand not just for humanity, but for every species that believes freedom is worth dying for. Through the tactical displays, I could see the human formation taking shape. Unlike the standard defensive positions I had studied in military academies across 7 sectors, the human fleet was arranging itself in what could only be described as an offensive formation. Not the desperate last charge of a cornered animal, but the deliberate positioning of predators preparing to hunt. The Vortex believe they understand war, Chen continued, and I noticed the way her officers were nodding, their faces displaying that same inexplicable confidence. They have consumed civilizations that fought with honor, with logic, with everything the textbooks say makes for effective military strategy. What they have never encountered is a species that views impossible odds as a personal insult. I felt my translator struggling with some of the human idioms, but the intent was clear enough. These creatures were not preparing to die with dignity. They were preparing to win. Captain Rodriguez, the tactical officer standing to my left, noticed my confusion. He was a compact human with scars along his jaw that spoke of previous battles, and his eyes held the same predatory gleam I was beginning to recognize in his species. "Observers Yxra," he said quietly, "has anyone ever explained human military doctrine to you?" I admitted they had not. Human warfare had been studied, of course, but only in the context of their minor conflicts with pirates and raiders. Nothing that would prepare an observer for facing a threat of the Vortex magnitude. "We don't fight to survive," Rodriguez explained, his voice carrying the matter-of-fact tone humans used when discussing weather patterns. "Survival is what you do when fighting is no longer an option. We fight to win, even when winning is impossible." Especially then, on the tactical display, the Vortex swarm had begun its approach. At this distance, they appeared as a dark cloud blotting out the stars, their bioships pulsing with the bioluminescent patterns that served as their communication system. Even through the reinforced viewing ports, I could feel the oppressive weight of their presence, like staring into the void between galaxies. The human fleet, by contrast, seemed almost festive. Their ships moved with an energy that bordered on eagerness, communication channels alive with chatter that my translator rendered as jokes, encouragements, and what appear to be gambling pools on various aspects of the upcoming battle. "Reactor 7, this is Blackbird Squadron," came one transmission that the bridge crew found particularly amusing. "We've got a pool running on who bags the first Biotitan. Current odds favor the Defiant, but I'm betting on the stubborn mule because, well, it's in the name." Admiral Chun allowed the chatter to continue for several minutes before calling for communications discipline. When she spoke again, her words were being broadcast to every human vessel in the fleet. 300 years ago, at a place called Thermopylae, 300 soldiers held a pass against an army of thousands. They knew they were going to die. They chose to fight anyway, because sometimes the right thing to do is the hard thing to do. Today, we are those 300. Today, we hold the line not because we can, but because we must. I had read about this historical reference in my preparation files. The Battle of Thermopylae was one of several human conflicts that military analysts had dismissed as aberrations, statistical outliers that did not represent effective military thinking. Rational species did not throw away lives in hopeless battles for abstract concepts like honor or freedom. But as I watched the human fleet complete its formation, I began to understand that what other species called aberrations, humans called Tuesday. The Vortex advance continued, and at 10 million kilometers, their intent became clear. The swarm was not simply approaching for a standard engagement. They were spreading out in the hunting pattern that preceded planetary consumption, their bioships beginning the process of dividing into specialized feeding and combat configurations. "They're not planning to just defeat us," observed Commander Sarah Kim from the sensor station. "They're planning to consume this entire system." "Then we'd better not give them the chance," Admiral Chin replied, and I heard something in her voice that my translator couldn't quite capture. It was anticipation mixed with anger, wrapped in a determination so absolute it seemed to bend reality around it. The human fleet began to move. What happened next violated several fundamental principles of space combat. Standard doctrine dictated that when facing superior numbers, defensive forces should establish overlapping fields of fire, create killing zones, and attempt to whittle down the enemy force through attrition. This was how civilized species conducted warfare, methodically, logically, with careful attention to minimizing losses. The human fleet charged, not the desperate rush of a broken force, but The coordinated advance of a predator pack that had spotted weakness in prey they had been studying for days. The formation was complex, multi-layered, with smaller ships weaving between larger vessels in patterns that seemed chaotic until you realized they were creating overlapping fields of mutual protection. All ships, this is actual, Admiral Chen's voice carried across the fleet channels. Weapons free. Remember, we are not here to trade blows with these things. We are here to end them. At 5 million kilometers, the first long-range exchanges began. Vorthack bioships launched clouds of organic projectiles, living weapons that would burrow into enemy hulls and consume them from within. The human response was immediate and overwhelming. Concentrated bursts of plasma fire, kinetic rounds moving at significant fractions of light speed, and something I had never seen before in space combat. Nuclear weapons. Hundreds of them. Sweet, merciful void. I whispered, watching the sensor displays track dozens of fusion warheads accelerating toward the Vorthack formation. They're using atomic weapons in space combat. Captain Rodriguez overheard me. Observer, has anyone ever explained the concept of total war to you? I admitted they had not. Most civilized species had evolved beyond such primitive concepts, recognizing that war should be conducted with appropriate restraint and consideration for future diplomatic relations. Total war, Rodriguez explained as the first nuclear detonations began lighting up the space between the fleets, is when you decide that the enemy needs to stop existing and you're willing to use every tool in the box to make that happen. It's what humans do when we're really angry. The nuclear barrage was not random. The warheads had been targeted at specific points in the Vorthack formation, designed to disrupt their coordination and force them into more manageable clusters. As the fusion fires died away, the human fleet continued its advance, individual squadrons breaking off to engage separated groups of bioships. "This is Wolverine Leader," came a transmission from one of the human fighter squadrons. "Beginning attack run on Biocluster 7. All ships, remember, aim for the nerve clusters. Make them hurt." What I witnessed over the next hour fundamentally changed my understanding of warfare. The humans were not simply fighting the Vorthack. They were dismantling them with surgical precision. Each attack was targeted not just at destroying enemy ships, but at causing maximum pain and disruption to the hive mind that coordinated the swarm. The Vorthack, for their part, responded with increasing desperation. Their bioships began exhibiting behaviors I had never seen before: erratic movement patterns, inefficient weapon targeting, signs of what could only be described as panic. The hive mind that made them so effective was being systematically shredded by human tactics designed specifically to exploit their collective nature. Sensor Officer, Admiral Chen called out, "Analysis of enemy formation coherence. Ma'am, their coordination is degrading rapidly. Estimate 23% efficiency loss in the past 40 minutes. Whatever they expected to face out here, it wasn't this. Good. All ships, Phase 2. Time to show them what happens when you threaten human space." I watched in fascination as the human fleet began to execute a maneuver I later learned was called the Murphy's Gambit, named after an ancient human military philosophy that essentially stated if something could go wrong, it would go wrong. So you might as well plan for everything to go wrong at once and use that to your advantage. The entire human formation suddenly broke apart, each ship seemingly abandoning its position to engage in individual combat with Vorthack bioships. To an observer versed in traditional military doctrine, it appeared to be the complete collapse of command and control that preceded total defeat. It was actually the most sophisticated piece of tactical coordination I had ever witnessed. Each human ship was not operating independently, but as part of a vast, fluid network that responded to changing conditions faster than any central command structure could manage. When a bioship adapted to plasma fire, 3 human vessels would immediately switch to kinetic weapons. When Vorthack fighters swarmed a human destroyer, nearby vessels would create overlapping fields of defensive fire without being asked. "How are they doing this?" I asked Captain Rodriguez, watching the tactical display show patterns of mutual support that seemed to anticipate enemy movements. Initiative, he replied. Every human commander from the admiral down to squad leaders is authorized to make tactical decisions based on local conditions. We don't wait for orders when we see a threat or an opportunity. We act. But the coordination, we've been training together for 3 years, preparing for this exact scenario. Every ship's crew knows how every other ship's crew will respond in any given situation. It's like a dance that we've been practicing our whole lives. As if to emphasize his point, a human cruiser suddenly broke from its engagement pattern to intercept a group of Vorthak bioships that were attempting to flank Admiral Chen's flagship. The cruiser's captain had made that decision without orders, based purely on tactical instinct and knowledge of how his colleagues would respond to his absence. The Vorthak swarm, designed to fight enemies that followed predictable patterns and hierarchical command structures, found itself completely unable to adapt to an opponent that seemed to operate on controlled chaos. "Contact," called out the sensor officer. Vorthak command ship identified. Bio-Titan class, approximately 30 kilometers in length. She's hanging back behind the main formation, coordinating the attack. Admiral Chen's smile widened, and I felt a chill run down my carapace. All ships, new priority target. Let's cut the head off this particular snake. What happened next would later be studied in military academies across the galaxy as either the most brilliant tactical maneuver in recorded history or the most insanely reckless. The human fleet, while still engaged in combat across a 3-dimensional battlefield spanning several million cubic kilometers, began a coordinated advance on the Vorthak command ship. Not a retreat from the current battle to engage a new target, but a fighting advance that maintained all current engagements while simultaneously pursuing what appeared to be a suicide mission against the most heavily defended ship in the enemy fleet. "Admiral," came a voice from the communications station. "We're receiving a transmission from the Vorthak command ship. They're requesting parley." The bridge fell silent. In the entire recorded history of Vorthak expansion, they had never requested negotiation. They consumed. They moved on. They did not talk. "Put them through," Chen said. The holographic display shimmered, and suddenly, the bridge was filled with the presence of something that had haunted my nightmares for cycles. The Vorthak mind, a collective consciousness composed of thousands of individual bioships, spoke through what appeared to be a grotesque hybrid of insect and machine. "Human Admiral." The voice was like grinding metal mixed with organic decay. "You fight with techniques unknown to us. Your species was classified as minor threat. This classification appears incorrect." "You could say that," Chen replied conversationally. "Is there something you wanted to discuss? Or are we going to continue this dance?" "We propose cessation of hostilities. Withdrawal from this system. We seek other feeding grounds." I cannot believe what I was hearing. The Vorthak swarm, the terror of 17 star systems, was attempting to negotiate a retreat. Admiral Chen considered this for exactly 3 seconds. "Counterproposal," she said. "You leave this system, you leave human space, you leave this entire galactic arm, and maybe we let some of you live long enough to find a new feeding ground somewhere far, far away from anything we consider ours. Humans do not possess sufficient force to make such demands." Chen's smile became something that would have given apex predators pause. "Would you like to test that theory?" The transmission cut off. "All ships," Admiral Chen announced. "They just made this personal. I don't want to see anything bigger than a life pod leaving this system. Time to show the universe what happens when you mess with humanity's backyard." What followed was not a battle. It was an execution. The human fleet moved like a single organism with a singular purpose. Every ship working in perfect harmony to systematically dismantle the Vorthak swarm. They targeted command nodes, severing the connections that held the collective consciousness together. They focused fire on bioships, showing adaptive behavior, preventing the swarm from learning human tactics. They used weapons I hadn't known existed, including devices that seemed to disrupt the Vorthak bioships at a molecular level. "What are those weapons?" I asked, watching entire bioships simply cease to exist as strange energies washed over them. Quantum disruptors, Captain Rodriguez replied casually. We've been working on them for about 6 months, ever since we realized conventional weapons might not be enough. That basically convinced matter that it would rather be energy. That's impossible. The energy requirements alone. We figured out how to make impossible work about the same time we figure out how to make the Vortex stop existing. 2 hours after it began, the Battle of Kepler's Stand was over. Where once a swarm of 200,000 bioships had darkened the space between worlds, now only expanding clouds of organic debris marked their passing. The human fleet hung in space, virtually unscathed, 47,000 ships that had just proven themselves capable of ending threats that had consumed entire galactic civilizations. Admiral Chen opened a channel to the assembled fleet. Outstanding work, people. Ops, begin recovery operations for any survivors. Medical, prep for incoming wounded. Intel, I want full analysis of captured Vortex biotechnology within 6 hours. And someone give me a line to Earth Command. I think it's time to have a conversation with the Galactic Council about updating our threat classification. She turned to face me directly, and I realized that somewhere during the battle, I had stopped thinking of humans as a minor species and started thinking of them as something far more dangerous. Observer Zwaxtera, she said, I trust you got everything you needed for your report? I assured her I had, though I suspected the Council would not believe what I had witnessed. Good, Admiral Chen replied, because I have a feeling this is just the beginning. As the human fleet began the process of securing the battlefield, I started composing my report to the Galactic Council. But even as I worked, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had just witnessed something that would change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. The humans had not just defeated the Vortex swarm. They had done it so thoroughly, so efficiently, that it called into question every assumption the galactic community had made about warfare, about power, and about the species we had dismissed as a minor curiosity on the edge of known space. Looking back now, I realized that the Battle of Kepler's Stand was not the end of human expansion into galactic affairs. It was the announcement that humanity had arrived, and that the universe would never be the same. But at the time, all I could think about was the way Admiral Chun had smiled when facing impossible odds, and wonder what other impossible things humans might decide to make possible. The Galactic Council's emergency session was called exactly 72 hours after my initial report reached the core worlds. I had expected skepticism, perhaps even accusations of fabrication, but what I encountered when I materialized via quantum transmission into the Grand Assembly Chamber was something far more unsettling. Silence. 347 species representation, beings from every corner of known space, sat in absolute quiet as Supreme Chancellor Thrix Allen of the Crystalline Hegemon slowly read my report aloud. The massive chamber, capable of holding 50,000 delegates, felt oppressively small as each detail of humanity's victory was dissected and analyzed by the greatest military minds in galactic history. Observer Extra. Chancellor Thrix Allen's voice resonated through the crystal formations that served as the chamber's acoustic amplifiers. You claim that humanity fielded quantum disruptor weapons. The theoretical energy requirements for such devices exceed the total power output of most civilized worlds. I confirmed the accuracy of my observations, though I understood their disbelief. Watching entire Vortex bioships simply cease to exist had challenged my own understanding of what was technologically possible. Furthermore, continued Delegate Morduin of the Ethereal Collective, his gaseous form shifting colors to indicate extreme agitation. You report that human ships operated without centralized command coordination, yet maintained tactical cohesion across a battlefield spanning millions of cubic kilometers. This violates fundamental principles of information theory and command efficiency. Again, I confirm my observations. The human fleet had indeed operated as what their military termed a distributed command network, with individual ship commanders making tactical decisions based on real-time local conditions while maintaining perfect coordination with their colleagues. Impossible, declared war leader Graf of the Saurian military caste, his massive reptilian form rising from the delegate pit. The communication delays alone would render such coordination ineffective. Enemy adaptation would outpace any distributed response system. And yet, I replied, accessing my recording files, I have comprehensive sensor data showing exactly how they accomplished this seemingly impossible feat. The holographic projectors around the chamber came to life, displaying the tactical recordings I had compiled during the battle. 347 of the galaxy's most experienced military strategists watched in growing amazement as human ships anticipated each other's movements, provided mutual support without being asked, and adapted to Vorthack tactics faster than the hive mind could respond. This is not warfare as we understand it, whispered Prime Strategist Velkoth of the Academic Military Institute. This is something altogether different. That observation would prove more prophetic than any of us realized at the time. The emergency session continued for 18 standard hours, with military experts from across the galaxy attempting to reconcile what they were seeing with established tactical doctrine. The consensus that emerged was deeply troubling. Either my observations were somehow flawed, or humanity possessed military capabilities that fundamentally altered the strategic balance of galactic power. Supreme Chancellor Thrix Allen made the decision that would shape the next phase of human-galactic relations. Observer Zyectara, you will return to human space with a full diplomatic and military analysis team. We must understand how they achieved this victory, and, more importantly, we must determine their intentions regarding galactic stability. I agreed, though I suspected the humans would find such scrutiny amusing rather than threatening. What concerned me more was the undercurrent of fear I detected among the assembled delegates. These were representatives of species that had survived galactic wars, cosmic disasters, and encounters with entities that existed beyond normal space-time. Yet the prospect of a minor species possessing superior military capabilities had shaken them in ways I had never witnessed. The return journey to human space took 8 standard days via the fastest diplomatic courier available to the Council. My escort consisted of Fleet Admiral Trixmoth of the Combined Galactic Defense Forces, Strategic Analyst Uiera of the Predictive Military Academy, and Senior Technology Assessor Klondar of the Advanced Weapons Research Division. Between them, they possessed more military knowledge than most planets could claim. None of it would prepare them for what we found when we arrived at the human capital world of Terra Prime. The first indication that something fundamental had changed came when our courier ship was intercepted at the edge of the Sol system by a human patrol vessel that definitely had not existed before the Battle of Kepler's Stand. The ship that hailed us was sleek, predatory, and radiated an energy signature that made our escort's instruments struggle to maintain stable readings. Diplomatic Courier Harmony's voice: "This is the Human Defense Force vessel Necessary Evil. Please state your business in human space." Fleet Admiral Trixmoth, a veteran of 43 stellar conflicts, found himself speechless as our sensor array provided detailed scans of the human ship. According to our instruments, the Necessary Evil was somehow simultaneously present in normal space and existing in a state of quantum superposition that allowed it to be in multiple locations at once. "That's not possible," Technical Assessor Klondar muttered, his cybernetic implants working overtime to process the contradictory data. The energy signatures we're detecting would require matter-antimatter conversion efficiency beyond theoretical maximums. Courier Harmony's voice: "This is Observer Vexthara of the Veltar Hegemony, returning from the Galactic Council with diplomatic credentials and a scientific assessment team. We request permission to proceed to Terra Prime." There was a pause, during which our communications systems registered activity that suggested the human vessel was conducting scans of our ship that penetrated deeper than should have been technically feasible. "Observer Zwaextera, welcome back to human space. You and your team are cleared for direct transit to Terra Prime. Fair warning, We've made some improvements since your last visit. Try not to be alarmed by anything you see. As our courier ship proceeded toward the inner system, the improvements became immediately apparent. Where once human space had been defended by traditional patrol routes and fixed installations, we now encountered defensive systems that defied conventional understanding of space-time physics. Fleet Admiral, our pilot's voice carried an edge of controlled panic. I'm detecting defense platforms that appear to exist in folded space. They're occupying the same coordinates as normal space objects, but in a different dimensional framework. Admiral Trixmoth activated the tactical display, and we watched in fascination as human defensive positions materialized around us like predators emerging from camouflage. Space stations that had been invisible moments before revealed themselves to be massive constructs capable of deploying firepower that exceeded most planetary defense systems. How long have humans possessed dimensional manipulation technology? Strategic analyst Uyera asked, her normally calm demeanor showing signs of stress. According to our intelligence files, I replied, reviewing my mission briefings, they do not possess dimensional manipulation technology. They do now, Klondar observed grimly. The question is how they developed it so quickly and what else they might have developed that we don't know about. The answer to that question would become clear when we reached Terra Prime itself. The human capital world had been transformed. Where satellite images from 6 months prior showed a typical inhabited planet with normal infrastructure and development patterns, we now observe something that challenged fundamental assumptions about technological advancement. Cities that had been built according to conventional engineering principles now existed in multiple dimensional phases simultaneously, allowing them to occupy far more space than their physical footprint should have permitted. Transportation systems moved through what appeared to be controlled wormhole networks, enabling instantaneous travel between continental land masses. Most disturbing of all, the planet's defensive grid was clearly powered by controlled manipulation of stellar energy, drawing power directly from the local star through methods that our scientific instruments could not analyze. This level of technological advancement should require centuries of development, Klondar said, his voice barely above a whisper. What we're observing represents quantum leaps in multiple scientific disciplines, achieved in a matter of months. Unless, Yura said thoughtfully, they already possessed this technology and simply chose not to deploy it until they felt it was necessary. That possibility was even more disturbing than rapid technological advancement. It suggested that humanity had been deliberately concealing their true capabilities from the galactic community for decades. Our courier ship was directed to a landing facility that existed in what humans casually referred to as expanded spatial coordinates. The docking bay we entered was larger inside than outside, a violation of basic geometric principles that our escort team found profoundly unsettling. Admiral Chun was waiting for us, though she looked different than she had during the battle. Where before she had projected confident competence, she now radiated an authority that seemed to bend reality around her. Her uniform bore insignia that I did not recognize, and her eyes held depths that suggested she had seen things that existed beyond normal experience. Observers extra, she said, extending the human gesture greeting known as a handshake. Welcome back. I trust your journey was educational. I introduced my escort team, noting how each of them struggled to maintain professional composure in Admiral Chen's presence. There was something about her that suggested she had become more than she had been during our last encounter, though I could not identify exactly what had changed. Admiral, Fleet Admiral Trixmoth said, we're here at the request of the Galactic Council to better understand humanity's recent technological advancements. The capabilities you displayed during the Vorthack engagement represent significant developments in military science. Chun smiled, and I was reminded of the expression she had worn just before ordering the destruction of 200,000 enemy vessels. Admiral Trixmoth, I think there are some things you need to understand about human development. Would you and your team like to take a tour of our research facilities? I think you'll find them illuminating. What we discovered over the next several hours fundamentally changed our understanding not just of human technology, but of human nature itself. The research facilities Admiral Chun showed us were not developing new technologies. They were implementing applications of scientific principles that human theorists had worked out decades, or even centuries earlier, but had never felt the need to build because they had been content with simpler solutions to their problems. You see, explained Dr. Sarah Martinez, the lead scientist at the Terra Prime Advanced Research Institute, humans have always had two parallel tracks of development: practical technology that we use for day-to-day life, and theoretical science that we pursue because we're curious about how the universe works. Most species focus on practical applications and develop theory as needed. We do it backwards. She led us through laboratories where human researchers were casually manipulating fundamental forces that most civilizations never learned to harness: gravity manipulation, temporal field generation, matter-energy conversion at efficiencies that exceeded theoretical maximums. All techniques that human scientists had figured out on paper long before they built the equipment to make them work. The quantum disruptors that your observer witnessed, Dr. Martinez continued, were based on theoretical work completed over a century ago. We just never built them because we didn't have anything that required that level of destructive capability. Until the Vortex swarm, I said, understanding beginning to dawn. Exactly. When we realized that conventional weapons might not be sufficient, we simply implemented some of the theoretical work that had been sitting in academic journals waiting for a practical application. Technical assessor Klondar was examining a device that appeared to be generating controlled gravitational anomalies in a containment field. Dr. Martinez, this represents fundamental manipulation of space-time geometry. The mathematics alone should require computational resources beyond what most planets possess. Dr. Martinez looked puzzled. Actually, the math is relatively straightforward once you accept that space-time is more flexible than most species assume. We've been working out the equations for this kind of manipulation for over 2 centuries. The hard part was building materials strong enough to contain the effects. 2 centuries? Strategic analyst Uiera's voice carried a note of disbelief. You've possessed this theoretical knowledge for 2 centuries? Oh, much longer than that for some things, Dr. Martinez replied conversationally. We've had workable theories for faster-than-light travel since the early atomic age, dimensional manipulation since the information age, and controlled matter-antimatter conversion since we first split the atom. We just never built any of it because we didn't need to. Admiral Chun, who had been observing our reactions with apparent amusement, decided to elaborate. Gentlemen, ladies, and honored Xeno colleagues, she said, I think it's time you understood something fundamental about human nature. We are not a species that develops technology because we need it. We are a species that develops technology because we want to know if we can. The difference is that we've learned to be very careful about implementing things until we're sure we need them. But the speed of your recent advancement, Admiral Trixmoth began, was not advancement, Chen interrupted. It was deployment. When the Vortex swarm appeared, and we realized that conventional defense would be insufficient, we simply started building things we had known how to build for generations. The quantum disruptors, the dimensional defense platforms, the expanded spatial coordinates, all of it was already worked out. We just needed a reason to move from theory to implementation. The implications of this revelation were staggering. It meant that humanity's classification as a minor species had been based on a fundamental misunderstanding of their development pattern. While other civilizations developed technology in response to need, humans developed theory in response to curiosity and implemented it only when circumstances required. How much theoretical knowledge do you possess that has not been implemented? Klondar asked, and I could hear the dread in his voice. Dr. Martinez considered this carefully. Well, we have workable theories for stellar engineering, galactic-scale construction projects, controlled black hole manipulation, timeline alteration, parallel dimensional access, consciousness transfer, controlled evolution, artificial universe creation. She paused, apparently trying to remember the full list. Oh, and we've pretty much figured out how to manipulate the fundamental constants that govern reality, though we're all agreed that implementing them would be unwise. The silence that followed, this casual recitation of godlike capabilities, stretched for nearly a full minute. You have theories for altering the fundamental constants of reality? Uiera finally whispered. Well, yes, Dr. Martinez replied, but, like I said, we're not planning to implement that. Too many variables, too much potential for unintended consequences. We're very careful about that sort of thing. Admiral Chun stepped forward, her expression becoming more serious. This is what I need the Galactic Council to understand, she said. Humanity did not suddenly become a major military power. We have always possessed the capability to be a major military power. We simply chose not to exercise that capability because we had no need to project force beyond our own borders. The Vortex Swarm changed that, I said. The Vortex Swarm proved that the galaxy contains threats that could endanger not just human space, but all the species we have come to consider friends and allies. That threat required us to stop pretending we were a minor species and start acting like what we actually are. Which is? Admiral Trixmoth asked, though I suspected he already knew the answer and was hoping to be wrong. Admiral Chen's smile returned, and this time I understood exactly what it meant. The apex predator species of this galaxy, she said. We just spent 3 centuries trying to be something else. The tour continued for several more hours, with human researchers casually demonstrating technologies that individually represented breakthrough advances in fields that galactic civilization had been working on for millennia. What became clear was that humanity's technological development had not been limited by theoretical understanding, but by deliberate restraint. We learned early in our development, Admiral Chan explained as we observed a controlled experiment in temporal field manipulation, that the ability to do something does not automatically mean you should do it. Most of human history consists of learning that lesson over and over again. So you deliberately limited your technological implementation? Uiera asked. We deliberately limited our technological implementation to what we needed for our chosen lifestyle. We want to be explorers, scientists, artists, philosophers, not galactic conquerors. The fact that we could have built an interstellar empire centuries ago was irrelevant because we had no interest in ruling other species. Past tense, Admiral Trixmoth observed. Chen's expression became thoughtful. That's still being debated. The Vortex Swarm demonstrated that other species in this galaxy are developing or encountering threats that could endanger all of us. The question now is whether humanity can continue to pursue our preferred lifestyle while also taking on the responsibility of protecting galactic civilization from existential threats. And if you cannot, I asked, though I was not certain I wanted to hear the answer. Then, we will do what we have always done when circumstances force us to choose between our preferences and our responsibilities, Admiral Chen replied. We will adapt our preferences and meet our responsibilities. As our diplomatic mission prepared to return to the Galactic Council, I found myself composing a report that I knew would fundamentally alter the balance of galactic politics. Humanity was not a minor species that had achieved an unexpected victory against superior opposition. They were an apex predator species that had been deliberately restraining themselves for centuries and had now been forced to abandon that restraint by external circumstances. The implications for galactic stability were profound. Every military calculation, every strategic assessment, every diplomatic assumption about the balance of power would need to be reconsidered in light of humanity's true capabilities. But what troubled me most was not what humanity could do, but what they might choose to do if they decided that other threats to galactic civilization required the same level of response they had given to the Vortex Swarm. Standing on the observation deck of our courier ship as Terra Prime fell behind us, I watched human patrol vessels maintaining their expanded perimeter around the solar system. Ships that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, powered by controlled stellar manipulation, crewed by beings who had spent centuries learning to restrain themselves and had only recently decided to stop. Admiral Chun had said that humanity's future role in galactic affairs was still being debated among their leadership. I suspected that debate would be resolved sooner than any of us anticipated, and that the resolution would reshape the galaxy in ways that none of us could predict. The universe had spent millions of years learning to fear the Vortex swarm. It was about to learn what it meant to live in the same galaxy as humanity unleashed. The emergency session of the Galactic Council that followed my second report lasted 14 standard days and fundamentally altered the structure of galactic civilization. What had begun as an assessment of humanity's unexpected military capabilities had evolved into something far more significant, a complete reevaluation of the assumptions that governed interstellar politics. Supreme Chancellor Thrix Allen called the session to order with an admission that would have been unthinkable before my reports reached the core worlds. Fellow delegates, her crystalline voice resonated through the Grand Assembly chamber. We are gathered here not to debate policy adjustments or trade agreements, but to acknowledge that our understanding of galactic power balance has been fundamentally flawed for over 3 centuries. The assembled representatives of 347 species listened in silence as the Council's senior military advisors presented their analysis of humanity's true capabilities. The holographic displays showed theoretical projections of human technological implementation that painted a picture of a species capable of reshaping galactic civilization at will. According to our best estimates, reported Fleet Admiral Gorth of the Combined Defense Forces, if humanity chose to implement their full theoretical knowledge base, they could establish technological dominance over this entire galactic arm within a standard decade. Furthermore, added senior strategic analyst Valkyrin, their demonstrated ability to develop and deploy advanced technologies in response to specific threats suggests that any attempt to contain or oppose them would likely result in acceleration of their technological implementation rather than limitation of their capabilities. The implications were stark. For the first time in recorded galactic history, a single species possessed the theoretical capability to dominate all others, not through conquest or expansion, but through technological advancement so profound that resistance would be futile. But what happened next surprised everyone, including myself. Humanity requested permission to address the Council directly. The request itself was unprecedented. Never before had a species under Council evaluation been permitted to participate in deliberations concerning their own classification and potential response protocols. But given humanity's demonstrated capabilities, traditional protocols seemed inadequate. Admiral Chun materialized via quantum transmission into the Grand Assembly chamber, accompanied by 2 figures I did not recognize. One was an elderly human male whose presence seemed to carry the weight of vast age and accumulated wisdom. The other was a young human female whose eyes held depths that suggested she had seen things that existed beyond normal space-time. Honored delegates, Admiral Chun began, her voice carrying easily through the vast chamber without technological amplification. I am Admiral Sarah Chun of the Human Defense Forces. With me are Dr. Marcus Webb, Director of Human Theoretical Sciences, and Commander Elena Vasquez of our Temporal Studies Division. The fact that humanity apparently possessed a temporal studies division sent whispers of alarm through the assembled delegates. We are aware, Chun continued, that our recent actions have caused concern regarding galactic stability and the balance of power among civilized species. We are here to address those concerns directly and to propose a path forward that serves the interests of all galactic civilizations. Chancellor Thrix Allen granted permission for humanity to present their position, though I could see tension in her crystalline structure that suggested she was prepared for humanity to make demands that the Council would be unable to refuse. Dr. Webb stepped forward, and when he spoke, his voice carried the authority of someone who had spent a lifetime studying the fundamental nature of reality. Esteemed colleagues, he said, I want to begin by acknowledging that humanity's technological revelations have created anxiety about our intentions and capabilities. These concerns are not unreasonable. A species with our theoretical knowledge could indeed dominate galactic civilization through technological superiority. The chamber remained silent, waiting for the declaration of human hegemony that many clearly expected. However, Dr. Webb continued, I want to explain why such dominance would be contrary to fundamental human values and counterproductive to our long-term objectives. What followed was a presentation unlike anything I had ever witnessed in the council chambers. Dr. Webb did not outline humanity's military capabilities or make veiled threats about their technological advantages. Instead, he delivered what could only be described as a philosophical treatise on the nature of power, responsibility, and sustainable civilization. Humanity learned long ago, he explained, that the ability to dominate others does not create the conditions necessary for long-term survival and prosperity. Our history is filled with examples of individuals and groups who possess superior capabilities and use them to establish temporary dominance, only to discover that domination creates resistance, and resistance eventually overcomes any technological or military advantage. He activated holographic displays that showed not human military capabilities, but human cultural and scientific achievements that have been developed through cooperation rather than conquest. Our greatest advances, Dr. Webb continued, have come not from imposing our will on others, but from learning from others and contributing to collaborative efforts that benefit all participants. This is why we deliberately limited our technological implementation for centuries. We recognized that the pursuit of dominance would ultimately diminish rather than enhance our civilization. Commander Vasquez stepped forward, and when she spoke, her words carried implications that made several delegates lean forward in their seats. The Temporal Studies Division, she said, has analyzed multiple timeline scenarios for galactic development based on various approaches to human technological deployment. In every timeline where humanity pursues technological dominance, galactic civilization stagnates within 3 centuries and faces existential threats within 5 centuries. Existential threats? Inquired War Leader Graf, his massive form shifting with interest. Entities and forces that exist beyond this galaxy, Vasquez replied. The universe is far larger and far more dangerous than any of our species currently understand. Galactic civilization's long-term survival depends on continued growth, adaptation, and cooperation among all species. Technological dominance by any single species, even humanity, creates the conditions for stagnation that makes successful response to external threats impossible. The implications of this statement were staggering. Humanity apparently possessed not just advanced theoretical knowledge, but practical understanding of threats that existed beyond galactic boundaries. Admiral Chun resumed speaking, and her words would define the future relationship between humanity and galactic civilization. We propose, she said, a new model for interspecies cooperation based on collaborative development rather than competitive dominance. Humanity will share our theoretical knowledge and technological capabilities with all galactic species in exchange for access to your cultural perspectives, creative approaches, and unique insights. You would share your advanced technologies? Chancellor Thrick-Sallen's voice carried disbelief. All of them, Chun confirmed, with appropriate safeguards to prevent misuse, and with collaborative oversight to ensure that implementation serves the interests of galactic civilization rather than the ambitions of individual species. Dr. Webb activated another set of holographic displays that showed proposed organizational structures for technology sharing, joint research initiatives, and collaborative development projects. What we envision, he explained, is a galactic community where each species contributes their unique strengths to collective advancement. Humanity contributes theoretical knowledge and technological capability. Other species contribute cultural wisdom, creative perspectives, and specialized insights that we lack. For example, Commander Vasquez added, the Veltar hegemony's mathematical philosophy could accelerate our temporal manipulation research by centuries. The crystalline hegemon's harmonic sciences could revolutionize our approach to dimensional engineering. The ethereal collective's consciousness studies could help us understand phenomena that pure physical science cannot address. I felt a surge of pride that humanity recognized value in my people's mathematical traditions, followed immediately by amazement at the scope of what they were proposing. This was not a conquest or a domination scheme. This was an invitation to collaborative advancement that could benefit all galactic species. What safeguards would prevent misuse of advanced technologies? Asked Representative Morduin of the Ethereal Collective. Admiral Chen's expression became serious. The same safeguards that have prevented humanity from misusing these technologies for centuries. Collaborative oversight, transparent development, and absolute commitment to the principle that technological capability must be balanced by ethical responsibility. Additionally, Dr. Webb added, many of our most advanced theoretical concepts require collaborative implementation. No single species, including humanity, possesses all the knowledge necessary to safely implement technologies like controlled reality manipulation or artificial universe creation. These capabilities require the combined wisdom of multiple civilizations. The debate that followed lasted for hours, with delegates asking detailed questions about implementation, oversight, and long-term implications. What became clear was that humanity had spent considerable time developing not just theoretical technologies, but theoretical frameworks for their responsible use. There is one additional factor, Commander Vasquez said during a pause in the questioning, that influences our decision to propose collaboration rather than dominance. Which is, inquired Fleet Admiral Gorth. The external threats I mentioned earlier are not hypothetical. Our Temporal Studies Division has detected probability cascades indicating that entities from outside this galaxy will attempt contact within the next 5 to 10 standard years. These entities possess capabilities that exceed even our most advanced theoretical knowledge. Galactic civilization survival will depend on our collective ability to respond to their arrival. The silence that followed this announcement was profound. Every delegate understood that if humanity, with their demonstrated technological superiority, considered these external entities to be threatening, then the survival of galactic civilization would indeed require unprecedented cooperation. Supreme Chancellor Thrix Allen called for a recess while the Council deliberated humanity's proposals. The debate among delegates was intense but brief. When the session resumed, the Chancellor's words would reshape galactic civilization. The Galactic Council, she announced, accepts humanity's proposal for collaborative technological development with the following modifications. A joint oversight committee will be established with representatives from all major galactic civilizations. Implementation of advanced technologies will be subject to collective approval, and humanity will provide full disclosure of their theoretical knowledge base to enable informed decision-making. Admiral Chun smiled, and, for the first time since I had met her, it was an expression of pure satisfaction rather than predatory anticipation. Accepted, she said. Dr. Webb will coordinate with your technical committees to begin the knowledge transfer process. Commander Vasquez will work with your strategic analysts to prepare for external contact protocols. And I will coordinate with your defense forces to ensure that our military capabilities serve galactic interests rather than human interests alone. What followed over the next several months was the most rapid technological advancement in galactic history. Human theoretical knowledge, combined with the cultural insights and specialized capabilities of dozens of other species, produced innovations that exceeded even human projections. The crystalline hegemon's harmonic sciences, when combined with human dimensional manipulation theory, produced transportation systems that allowed instantaneous travel between any points in the galaxy. The Veltar mathematical philosophy, integrated with human temporal studies, created prediction systems that could accurately forecast cosmic events centuries in advance. The ethereal collective's consciousness research, merged with human theoretical biology, opened pathways to understanding forms of life that existed beyond physical matter. But the true test of this collaborative approach came sooner than anyone had anticipated. Exactly 8 months after the council session, the external entities that Commander Vasquez had detected made contact. They arrived not as conquerors or explorers, but as refugees fleeing something that had consumed their home galaxy. The beings that materialized at the edge of galactic space possessed technology that made even advanced human theories seem primitive, but they had been defeated by something even more advanced. We are the remnants of the architects. Their leader communicated through methods that bypassed language entirely, speaking directly to consciousness. Our galaxy was consumed by entities that exist outside the normal flow of time and space. We seek sanctuary and alliance against threats that will eventually reach this galaxy. The response to this contact would have been impossible under the old system of galactic politics. Individual species would have competed for advantage, sought to acquire architect technology for themselves, or attempted to use the situation to enhance their own power. Instead, the collaborative framework that humanity had proposed enabled a coordinated response. Human theoretical knowledge provided the foundation for understanding architect science. Veltar mathematical philosophy offered frameworks for comprehending the nature of the threats they described. Crystalline harmonic sciences established communication protocols that allowed meaningful dialogue with beings whose thought processes operated on cosmic timescales. The ethereal collective's consciousness research proved crucial for understanding how entities that existed outside normal space-time could be combated, while dozens of other species contributed insights that no single civilization could have provided alone. Within 6 months of first contact, galactic civilization had not only provided sanctuary for the architect refugees, but had begun implementing defensive technologies that combined the best elements of human theoretical science, architect practical experience, and the diverse capabilities of all galactic species. Standing on the observation deck of the new Deep Space Monitoring Station Delta 7, watching collaborative teams of dozens of species working together to construct defenses against threats that existed beyond normal reality, I reflected on how profoundly everything had changed since that day. I first watched humans march into war against impossible odds. Admiral Chun joined me at the viewing port, her expression contemplative as she observed the construction work proceeding in the space beyond. "Observer Zafra," she said, "do you ever regret that day when you came to document humanity's inevitable defeat?" I considered the question carefully. The galaxy I now inhabited bore little resemblance to the one I had known before humans revealed their true nature. Power structures that had existed for millennia had been replaced by collaborative frameworks that no one had imagined possible. Technological advancement had accelerated beyond all previous projections. The very nature of what it meant to be a galactic civilization had been fundamentally altered. No, Europea unasli. I regret that it took a crisis to reveal what could be accomplished when species cooperate rather than compete. Admiral Chen nodded, her gaze fixed on the construction teams working in the distance. "The universe is vast," she said quietly, "and it contains wonders and terrors beyond anything any of our species have yet imagined. The threats we're preparing for now are not the last we'll face, and they may not be the worst. But I think we've learned something important about how to face the unknown, which is that the greatest strength any civilization can possess is not superior technology or military capability, but the wisdom to recognize that survival depends on cooperation rather than dominance." As I watch human engineers working alongside crystalline harmonic specialists, Veltar mathematicians collaborating with ethereal consciousness researchers, and architect refugees sharing their knowledge with beings they had never encountered before, I understood that Admiral Chen was right. The universe had taught galactic civilization to fear various threats over the millennia. The Vortex swarm, cosmic disasters, entities that existed beyond normal space-time. But humanity had taught us something far more valuable, that the greatest power was not the ability to dominate others, but the ability to inspire others to collaborate in pursuit of goals that benefited everyone. The construction work continued around us, beings from across the galaxy, and beyond working together to build defenses against threats that no single species could face alone. It was, I realized, the most profoundly human thing I had ever witnessed, turning an impossible challenge into an opportunity for collaborative achievement. And somewhere in the depths of space, I knew that other threats were stirring, other challenges were approaching that would test the strength of what we had built together. But for the first time since I had begun observing galactic affairs, I was not afraid of the unknown, because I had learned what happened when species that should have been enemies chose instead to become allies, when beings that could have dominated chose instead to collaborate. The universe was vast, and it was dangerous, and it contained wonders and terrors beyond imagination. But it also contained humanity and the galactic civilization they had chosen to help build rather than conquer. That, I had learned, made all the difference,